morning. I'm talking with David Nishball, founder and managing director of Darlington Partners, on telecommunications and the need for transformation in telecommunications. Dave, great to have you with us to talk about telecoms.
Thanks, Manoj.
So, Dave, transformation is such a hot topic and such a buzzword, and telecoms has been talking about transformation for such a long time. But that is also the nature of the business of telecoms, and fast and rapid changes in technology. Do you think we have, the major transformations in telecom are behind us, or do we see the need to see an accelerating pace at which transformation will happen in telecoms moving forward?
I think transformation is more or less a necessity and a continuing factor in a high-tech industry. The problem is things that were difficult to do in the past become easy in the future. And as they become easy, then customers are no longer willing to pay for it, so you have a continuous commoditization cycle that forces telcos to continue to move up the value chain. And that was true 10 years ago, and it's true today.
Excellent. Thank you. If transformation is really business as usual, then why aren't telecoms so really good at it?
You're right. It seems like we've been doing it forever, but it's still a challenge. And I think it comes back to the historical legacy of the telco. If you look at how most telcos today grew up and became successful, it was by making very large capital investments and then filling up their networks. So telcos really became EBITDA machines, and they became hooked on very high EBITDA margins. And that became the basis for the whole way they do business. Today's opportunities are very different and may not be appropriately measured by metrics like EBITDA.
So that means telcos will really need to balance multiple business models at the same time. They have their existing business, which is maybe an EBITDA machine, and they have new businesses where they compete with the next generation companies like Google's and Apple's of this world, which are operating in a very different business model. So how do you manage that transition? Or they need to coexist in two different...
Yeah, I think it's one of the trickiest things. I think every telco today realizes most of their growth in the future may come from the new business models. But still, the bulk of their existing revenue and the bulk of their investment still sits in the old model. So they can't turn their back on the old way of doing business. If you have a network, still your first imperative is to fill it up. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you don't compete your priorities for your new business opportunities with your old business opportunities on the old metrics, or the new ones will not get the attention they need.
So Dave, what are the triggers which you believe is the reason for this accelerating pace of transformation in the telecoms industry?
As I said, I think the transformation is an ongoing process, a continuing creation destruction process. But at the same time, as telcos have been moving up the value chain, one of the things that we're seeing is they're moving into areas where there's more alternatives, there's more different ways to solve the same problem. If it was just a matter of transmitting data over distance, then there weren't too many alternatives other than the fiber optic cable. And the investment required in fiber optic, either land deployment or sea deployment, took a very, very long time. Today's investments are much shorter cycle time. And there's many more alternatives that can be deployed in a very rapid interval, and thus I think you see an acceleration of the requirement to transform.
So what are the big opportunities, for the telcos if they really are able to transform themselves? What are the big opportunities that they need to address over the next 5, 7, 10 years time frame?
I think telcos are used to having infrastructure as their core competence. And I think more and more infrastructure becomes an asset, but no longer a huge differentiator. But what telcos do have is customers. And their access to customers is a unique capability. And if they can leverage that access to customers and continue to bring new propositions and new value, that's a winning formula for the telco for the long term.
So if they have to manage that customer relationship, that means they need to have outstanding sales teams, which maybe they have not traditionally been very good at managing, training, incentivizing sales teams as compared to, let's say, an IT sales organization.
I think that's absolutely true. In the first place that many telcos look to transform when it's time to look at offering a new proposition to their customers is transforming their sales force. They understand that the same sort of sales force doesn't bring the skills necessary for new propositions. But I think as you get into it, what you find is Salesforce alone is not enough. If you don't transform your business practices, your finance methodologies, the basic business model, your HR principles, you'll find your salespeople can be out there on a very, very narrow ledge.
How about cloud? There is so much hype about cloud. Is it a hype? Is there a real business opportunity? And if yes, what do telcos need to be doing about it today?
I think cloud is both one of the biggest opportunities and also the biggest risks for telcos. If you think about it, cloud actually harkens back to that old world of EBITDA model, right? If you build it and you fill it, you start to generate extraordinary profits. And I think telcos are sort of a natural to move into cloud space. At the same point, if transport is relatively commoditized, you don't have to be a telco to offer cloud service. And your cloud doesn't have to be adjacent to your customers. So the opportunity for someone else to come in and offer the new iPhone store or whatever is there and isn't necessarily going to be.
So if you want to give 3 messages from transformation perspective, what would be those, let's say, top 3 messages that the telco should look out for in the next 2 to 3 years?
I think the first message I'd give is start with the fundamentals. Figure out the basic underlying business model that's going to drive your new business and embed that in your organization. If you don't have the business model right, then all the other actions that you try to take will be undermined. I think, secondly, recognize that transformation is a 360-degree process. There isn't a single champion, a single individual that can transform an organization. It's really when you get the entire team within a telco working together around the new business model, around the new set of objectives that you can be successful. And third, transformation is here to stay. So get used to it.
Excellent. Final question. When we talk about, do you really believe that telcos can do everything that you said? Would you invest your money in a telecom company?
Unfortunately, I have. So I'm counting on all the telcos out there to make me right.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Manoj.